Good morning from cold Dallas, Texas. We are freezing here. We're not used to this. We prefer the heat. We always like to say we're on fire for Jesus. Welcome to ZBTR TV. It is January 13th, 2024. We do thank you for joining us from wherever you are watching us from. I encourage you to tag a friend or let them know that the broadcast is live. And as we said last week, thank you everybody for the feedback on our conversation with Jay on his new book, The Crash of the Buffalo. Please get your copy. If you do not have a copy yet, it is available on Amazon. And it's important that all of us read this book. I can show you that's The Crash of the Buffalo by Jay Mumba. Go to Amazon, and every Zambian needs to have a copy of that book. Okay, today we're talking about issues to do with presidential summits. As you can see behind me there, the question for today is, are African presidential summits beneficial to the ordinary citizen? That's our conversation. So we shall get into a lot of things, and I have with me a wonderful panel here, some distinguished gentlemen. Dr. Jones Kasonso joining us, professor of practice in business. This is not his first time, neither is it going to be his last. We consider him to be a contributor and a team member of ZBTR TV. Happy New Year, sir. Welcome.
Happy New Year, Sankama. How are you?
Doing well. I forget, what state are you in again?
My home state is Iowa, but
Okay.
this morning I am coming from Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're a traveling professor. Welcome, welcome. Also joining us for the first time, and I'm excited to have this gentleman here, Clement Mutambo from Maryland. Okay, what city, Clement?
So I live in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Silver Springs, all right.
Yes.
Clement is one of our community leaders, the president of the Zambian Association in DMV, as it is called, tri-state, and is also a contributor and a co-host on Insaka Talk Show. We all know that comes every Sunday. Join them tomorrow, actually 1 p.m., I believe, Central Standard Time. Clement, thanks for being here today and for joining us. And we also have an amazing gentleman here. Okay, Alfred, your camera is not on. We have Alfred joining us from Nigeria. And Alfred was introduced to me by a wonderful friend. Since we are talking about African presidents, we thought we should have people from different nations. So Anotida from Zimbabwe was supposed to come, but he had an emergency. Alfred, your camera is frozen. When you get yourself together, just let me know. Okay, let's begin with this issue. I want us to talk about this issue. I know some people may think because it affects the ECL, Edgar Lungu, but for me, it's a matter of a constitutional argument. A president in Zambia will forfeit his benefits like it has happened to Mr. Lungu because he decided to presumably get back into active politics, whatever that means. My argument and fight with that is that's an archaic law. There is no such thing as retiring a politician from active politics. I thought all citizens have got the right to say whatever. So when you say retire from active politics, in your understanding, Clement, what does that mean anyway? What are you saying, active politics? What does that mean? Because Limon Moko Africa, the way we do it, I don't think we think through it. I'm sorry if I'm sounding sarcastic or what, because basically that's just the way I feel. It's an archaic law. Mm-hmm. And let me say, disclaimer, I commend President HH for removing that thing from the Constitution about defaming a president. You remember that?
Yeah.
He eliminated that. Mm-hmm. He needs to remove this as well. Okay, so Clement, to you, what does it even mean to retire from active politics? Help us out.
Well, in a nutshell, I would say returning from active politics is you disengage yourself from affairs of governance or anything and everything that may be going on in the country. So even if, say, something wrong is going on in the country, you don't have to participate because you're a retired politician. So it had become so. And I do get your point. And I mean, just from our previous conversations, this kind of goes back to how this clause was initiated in the Constitution.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that must be. I mean, you may know this more than I do. That must have been in '96, right?
Somewhere there, 93.
During actually, the time.
When I look at the copy of the Constitution here, it says, there's a date there. It says 24th December 1993. That was like 2 years after MMD came into power. Is he frozen?
Yeah. I think he's having a network. Yeah.
So it says 93. That's what it says here. So 2 years after the MMD came into power. Yeah. Continue, Clement.
Yes, and then it was enacted, I think, in '96 Constitution, if I remember very well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and that was specifically aimed at buying Dr. Kaunda from recontesting, because I remember there was even a clause about parentage, all that kind of stuff and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, it's a very ambiguous kind of statement, so to say, because my understanding is that when a president, goes out of office, right? Their office is still attached to the incumbent or the current presidency. There's the issue of national security. There's all sorts of things that goes on in the background. So they're still part and parcel of governance itself. So I think we need to be more definitive in what we say. What is retiring from politics? Do you just keep quiet if anything and everything is going wrong? Do you just disengage yourself and pretend nothing is happening in the country? That's a very ambiguous kind of question that we need to kind of ponder on. So I may let others to kind of chime in. And
Dr. Kasonso, what's your take on this?
My perspective would be from, first of all, looking at the spirit of the law before we take the text of the law. When the framers created that piece of regulation, what were they trying to achieve? And I would take the view that what the role of the former head of state is an institution, is a national asset. And because it's a national asset, there are a lot of things that we can derive from the former head of state in terms of their experience, their advice, and also just information on how certain things were done during their period, which leads the country to the situation in which it is. To be in that position become a political contestant or a political opponent makes all that unavailable. And if those type of situations in which the person who is supposed to be an asset is no longer available, then it doesn't make sense to attach benefits to the person holding such an office. That's the view I would take on that, because the statesman who wants to govern the country must be able to remain useful to the nation in a manner that is neutral.
Exactly.
That is neutral to the political discourse that is going on at any given time. Now, yes, it was applied on Kenneth Kaunda. Kenneth Kaunda had 27 years in power. Nang power tawikuta. You also 27 years. Fish Kaunda lefwa. So there was even a moral touch to this, to the situation, where it was fine to prevent him from continuing on further because he had his time. He had his time, and I think that even for Edgar Lungu and his people, the understanding must be very clear. They had their chance to lead. They didn't. If they didn't lead, well, it's time for the other people. And if he's not going to be available in that role of a former head of state, yeah, then he has to find alternative provisions, or maybe he can go back to the same court of law. There is a way in which the legal system in Zambia is very lenient to Edgar Lungu. I remember that Mwaka Mwarisa Chengapo term of office, is supposed to have served 2 terms.
Let me stop you there. Wakasonso. I don't want us to make this about ECL, because I want us to look at the law in itself. Like I keep saying, it's an archaic law in my view. Let's welcome Alfred. Alfred is joining us from Nigeria. He's a Pan-Africanist, and he was introduced to me by a friend. I did send this question to Alfred to say, what does the Constitution of Nigeria say about the former head of state? Alfred, could you share your thoughts with us on what the Nigerian Constitution says about this?
Oh, I guess it's frozen.
Alfred, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you come again with the question, please?
Yes, I said, remember, I shared this question with you to say, in Zambia, we have this law of a former president being required by law. If he's going to get his benefits, he must retire from active politics. Could you share with us what the situation in Nigeria is?
Well, in Nigeria, I would say the Constitution does not require that the former head of state or president, let me use that word president, needs to retire before he have access to any benefits. It's actually left to the president, the former president, to either be actively involved in politics or not. But that does not in any way stop or hinder his access to every benefit he needs to enjoy as a former head of state or as a former president in Nigeria.
Okay.
So the Constitution in Nigeria does not require you retiring first before you enjoy the benefit that comes with being a former president.
So as long as you are not you're not holding presidential office anymore, you will get your benefits and you can continue to be politically active. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, simple and straightforward. So
yes,
anyway,
which in my own opinion, okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Alfred.
I said, which in my own opinion, I feel that it's kind of not okay in my own opinion, because it's in Nigeria there is what we call godfatherism, and the way they play the politics is such that let's say a former president will have to bring in his own choice and not really the choice of the people to power. So trying to force people, trying
candidate
to
on the
force
people.
his own candidates on the people. So my own thoughts, my own idea about this thing is, I feel that if a president is done with office, he should not be actively involved in politics anymore, because it's now no longer about what the people want. It's not about what these people who had held a political position in the country before, what they feel is right in their own perspective, not in the perspective of the people.
Yeah. Oh, well, we had that situation in Zambia where a former president handpicked a candidate. Clement, can you wind up this discussion on this topic? We need to move on to presidential summits.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alfred, for that insight from Nigeria. It's very interesting to learn about a different dynamic of this situation. So, in addition to what my colleague has just said, one other thing we should also look into is that a former president is not a president of a party anymore. Like he's a overall statesman he's an overall statesperson of a country. And we also have to take into consideration that whatever statement or issues he makes has an impact on how the country's, how a country can, move and so on and so forth. So they have so much influence, even if they're in retirement. So, and we are coming from a situation as African governments where we're so much polarized on tribal lines, on religious lines, so disengaging from running office, I would say is, personally, I kind of agree with my colleague on that. But in terms of being active in any matters of society, I mean, to me, that's just okay. You saw, President Sata when, more often than not, I saw him, sending Dr. Kaunda, some of the international trips,
Yeah.
like that's part of politics and government itself. So he can serve in that kind of role. So we have to differentiate between retirement from, is it active, coming back to run for office, or actively in affairs of the country. So I think that's where this issue came from. If you look at the recent thing which happened in Zambia, all these benefits were fulfilled because the former president announced he's coming back, running for office with an intent to come and run for office. I guess that's where that problem began. So
yeah, I guess so. That's, I don't know. I will not be, Dr. Kasonso, if you have a comment on this, then we move on. I don't know. I guess what Clement has said would be the best approach for us to take, just to have a full-fledged show on trying to differentiate between that thin line. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Kasonso.
Yeah, like my colleagues have said, there is a role. I in my introductory statement, I say that there's a role that is just specifically to a person who has served in that office before, and he should be able to be available to the country. And where he chooses not to be available and becomes a political opponent, then something should change. Something should change, and particularly for a person who knows what the law says and makes that willful choice that they don't want the benefits. They would rather have they would rather be a political opponent. Give them what they want. Give them what they want. Give them the liberty to participate in the politics, and also take away the liberty to appropriate the benefits. That's okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's leave that alone. We'll do a full-fledged show on that. All right. Our main subject today is about African presidential summits. We've all observed over the past few years, especially last year and months, that African presidents, all of them, all African presidents, being summoned by Biden, being summoned by Putin, being summoned by, is it Xi? Is that how you say the name? The Chinese president? Jinping, yeah. All of them jumping on planes and going to China, to America, to Russia. And most recently, and this is what really triggered me to have this conversation here, and most recently, Saudi Arabia. Clement, I'm saying to myself, guys, Alfred, I'm saying to myself, first of all, maybe I'm just naive or I'm reading too much into this. That's why my question is, how do these things benefit the ordinary citizen? How has this benefited your uncle in Petauke? How has this benefited your cousin in Abuja, Alfred, the traveling of the president? How has this benefited? So presidents are hired by citizens. They apply for the job with other candidates, and we hire one president through a process called electoral process. We go to elections and we say, no. I think we've seen the way this one has done. Even if you're entitled to another 4 or 5 years, I think we need to try somebody else. The way you have done things, we want somebody else. So they work for us, although we don't see it that way. So first of all, what is Dr. Kasonso, you said something when we were talking behind the scenes, okay? There has to be an objective why these meetings are called. Can you educate us on that?
Thank you, Mr. Nkama, for that great question. The presidential summits being called, or each one of them as an objective. First of all, we have to look at it from the perspective of the person organizing it.
Yes.
What these global players are doing is to create a world in which they have more partners for their agenda than enemies. And most of these guys reckon that the Africans numerically, and just even the sheer size of the continent, the amount of natural resources coming from there, and other things that they can benefit from, the Africans have become useful. Have become useful to the Americans, become useful to the Saudis, become useful to the Chinese, become useful to the Russians. But each one of these have interests, their own interests in and their role in the global economy. So some presidents can go there. If they don't understand that, they don't have that in mind. They cannot have, if they don't have an indigenously created strategy of what they can benefit from relations with these global enterprises or global players, those are bound to be just photo ops and meaningless meetings. But each country
that's the way I look at them. That's the way I look at them.
But each country, Vankama, can leverage what they want to get from it. For example, it doesn't hurt for the Zambian government to go to China because we know that we owe the Chinese a lot of money. And showing up on the Chinese talk point and show helps us perhaps to negotiate the administration of those bonds, and the benefits can go to the citizens in that regard. The same thing with the Americans. The Americans literally control the global economy. If we are in good books with the Americans, then we are bound to close better business deals in that atmosphere. The benefits will eventually find themselves in Sanfia and in Solweji if we align our policies, our international policies and economic policies very well. The same thing with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, that's where comes mostly the oil. And also it's a big market for agricultural products. So if we align our own policies together with what is happening, it's like putting your ducks in a row and then waiting for the right moment and creating an opportunity and a platform on which we can present or create a treaty. The one that I'm doubtful of is the Russian connection, because the Russians are not very keen in terms of gaining more traction on the global stage. They are more an inward-looking society, maybe because it's the largest country or it's whatever it is. Maybe they want to sell you a few Katyushas and AK-47s. I don't see how Russia wants to be useful in terms of global trade because of the steps they take, and now they do their foreign policy. So in a short, for me, whether the benefits goes to the citizens or not depends on two things. One, the particular objective of the hosting country, and two, how we have calibrated our own in-house global policy and what we want to come to our citizens. That is the way I feel about that.
Okay, Alfred.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would say that first, the people we have as leaders in Africa, the question I always have in my mind whenever I see them, going for this summit is, do they bear the people, that is their own citizen, in mind?
It's one thing to as well, Alfred. That's the question I'm asking.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So, like, so going there, and to be very honest, all these summits our president or former president, all the presidents we have in Africa have been going for, have not been beneficial to the common citizen in each African countries, to be very honest. Because, for example, let's say for example, in Nigeria now, Nigeria have been having a close relationship with the United Kingdom and the United States of America for some years now. But with this relationship, I always ask, what exactly is the benefit we are enjoying in Nigeria? We are blessed with a lot of resources, but the common man are not enjoying the benefits of these resources. So now, the thing is, these countries, when they call for African leaders for summits, and of course, these summits are always for the sole aim of partnership with the African countries. And there is an hidden agenda in this particular thing. That is, they have their own personal agenda for this particular summit. In Africa, like Professor said earlier, we are blessed with a lot of resources. Like we have the crude oil, we have the gold, a lot of resources. All right. So they feel that having a relationship with the African countries can actually power their chances in the global economic stage. Let me put it that way. Because from my observation recently, I've been observing a lot of things, like different countries trying to, presently now, the United States of America are currently controlling the world economic system. And there are a lot of countries like China that are trying to, change that narrative. So now, with that, they are trying to, partner with African countries. That is why there have been a lot of partnerships recently with China, and if you notice, unobserved, China and Russia have been partnering with African countries a lot recently because of the agenda, their own personal agenda. For China, they are more concerned about the resources they are going to gain and how that is going to power their own economy, because China is so bent on, number one, displacing the value of dollar in the global markets. And two, trying so hard to remove the United States of America as the power nation in the world. That is, to be very honest, the United States, in my own opinion too, are not in that line, like, clean. Let me put it that way. They're not clean. When when countries like that comes and tell you they want to partner with you, they want to give you this, they want to give you that, that means they are expecting more in return.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Okay.
So now, the thing is, our leaders don't tend to ask themselves, okay, if we partner with this country, what are the side effects? What effect will it have on our own economy also? In Nigeria, we have crude oil. In Nigeria, crude oil is one of the major resources in Nigeria presently, and it's one of the major resources generating revenue in Nigeria presently. But now, despite the growth we've been experiencing in Nigeria, we do not have a refinery on our own. We export crude oil to the foreign countries, and they now import the byproduct of this crude oil back to us, and we will have to buy the byproduct again.
Wow, yeah, that's the African narrative. That's the African narrative. Okay, let's hear from Clement. So,
yeah.
Yes, Clement, what's your take on this?
This is a very interesting topic, and I'm glad you put it in, for discussion. So, just to maybe kind of bring you guys to speed, let me just give you a short synopsis of the African, richness. So, we as African continent, we are sitting on about 30% of global natural resources.
30%, right?
30%. You can Google. It's 30 or more than that. Then, right now, the African continent is only 17% of the global population right now. And then over 40% of the most impoverished are found in sub-Saharan Africa. So you can do the math then. It doesn't add up, right? Very small population, so much natural resources, high poverty rates. Then when we have our leaders come to these summits, whether it's in the US, Europe, I mean, I work in a multilateral system, so I kind of have ideas about some of these things. What usually happens is the fact is that as African leaders come for these summits, more often than not, the agendas is already set for them, not them setting the agenda. You see that? So it's basically more like a one-way street. So sometimes they may come to all these meetings, they come to UNGA, to annual meetings at the bank and everything, but everything is kind of well structured for them. So I'm in a contention that African leaders need to actually reorganize themselves and do more to take a lead in setting their own agenda. Why should we not be having this kind of summit? Why should not have all these presidents come to Africa? Right now, we have an African Union, which most people say is just a toothless bulldog, because if you look at what's going on, like in the Sahel, in West Africa, all these schools and everything, they still cry for the international community to come and intervene. Meanwhile, with what the African Union itself, so we're very much disorganized, and that's why these multilateral institutions or all these superpowers, I mean, they kind of fill that gap by dictating what and how Africa should move. So some of these summits, they are beneficial, some of them are not. Some of them, yes.
Do
some
we
of them
know, to Dr. Kasonso's point is objective of hosting country. Let's take one, for example. Do we know what the Biden administration's objective or agenda was for that summit? Do we know?
Which summit was that? The one that for African leaders?
Yes.
I remember I looked at that some time back, but I can't actually.
I think it was it December 2022?
Yeah, I think it was 2021 or so. But in fact, that one is a good example. So we had African leaders come, but the agenda was actually African leaders didn't set the agenda. You know that, right?
Yeah, of course. Unless Dr. Kasonso has got some information on what was the Biden administration agenda for that summit?
The Biden administration was just opening up and seeking more collaboration with African countries on individual countries' developmental programs, and how the U.S. can come alongside that and be of support and allow the African countries to benefit more from the global economy. So basically, the Biden administration was lining up disciples of their foreign policy.
Okay, let me ask this question. Any one of you can. I want all of the three of you to respond to this. Did the Biden administration do that because they realized that they are losing ground to China?
Absolutely.
That was the motivation.
Yeah, in my own opinion, yes. Yes.
Yeah, the motivation was trying to make escapes to curtail the growing Chinese influence. You know, they actually premised on the notion that China has this predatory lending habits, which is enslaving the Africans, and they offer themselves as a path to get out of date with the Chinese, voucher type of investment portfolio. So that's the way it was.
You use a phrase there which has caught my attention. Alfred Clement is China's what's the word? Is China's economic policy into Africa enslaving them or binding them, or I don't know. I keep hearing that from a lot of people to say China's agenda is a little bit, because one thing is this: China will come in, they won't put the terms that America and its allies do. Okay, America always sings the good governance song or policy. China doesn't give a crap about that. They will deal with anybody, whether you are a dictator, a democracy, or what. They'll build you a building, 100 stories. They don't care. So what's your view on China's policies as far as Africa is concerned, Clement?
Where China's policy in Africa, of course, is an economic imperialism right now. And unfortunately, by the time we're going to realize this in a nutshell, we would have actually lost everything, even the influence itself. So I would say, even though, I mean, if you had to compare what has been happening to the Western multilateral institutions' policies in Africa versus China has done a lot more. Right now, you can go there to many of these countries, if not all. There's a soccer stadium. They are structured. They are road networks, and they've done a lot actually. I remember I did a thesis on China's economic. My initial argument was China's imperial kind of policies in Africa. But what I was finding interesting were a lot more benefits. They've benefited African countries more than I thought was the case. Because if you come to, say, the bank, for example, most of these countries are indebted. They've defaulted a lot on the loans.
Yeah.
They can literally not be given any money. It happened to Zambia recently, under the previous government. So now China comes and say, okay, I'm going to give you this without even interest, But of course, it's not free money. There's no free lunch. So China still give you that kind of, they still give you that kind of support, even if you're high risk. So African countries are actually having that access to all these monies. And this is where you're finding more now people pocketing now where now corruption now is kind of hitting in, because it's not even accounted for.
You see, that's what I'm saying, that China doesn't care. They'll just do. Okay, Here's the question. When we're going to take a break and we shall look at this in details. Nigeria is, I believe, Africa's most populous country, and it has one of the top 3 large economies of Africa. What is, Alfred, get ready to respond to this when we come back. What is China's relationship with Nigeria and influence when we come back?
Are you ready to start your own show? Look no further than Zambia Blog Talk Radio TV's unbeatable hosting packages. We have hosting packages for all your live streaming needs. Introducing our basic, standard, and premium plans designed to fit your show's unique needs. With our basic plan, you get hosting and streaming only to Zambia Blog Talk Radio TV platforms, technical support, and a full hour of captivating content. Choose our standard plan, and you'll not only enjoy everything in the basic plan, but also receive promotions on our Facebook page and the freedom to stream to your personal platform, Facebook or YouTube. Your show, your choice. And for those who demand the best, our premium plan offers all the benefits of the basic and standard plans, plus the ability to multi-stream to your preferred platforms. That's right, the spotlight's on you. But wait, there's more. Are you planning an unforgettable event? Our events package is your ticket to flawless live streaming. From weddings to conferences, we make every moment count. Ready to shine on Zambia Blog Talk Radio TV? Reach out to us today at zbtr2009@gmail.com for questions, inquiries, or to create a custom one-time show package. Remember, at Zambia Blog Talk Radio TV, your success is our mission. All fees are subject to periodic review and change, ensuring you always get the best value. So, what are you waiting for? Let's make your show a sensation only on Zambia Blog Talk Radio TV. Zambia Blog Talk Radio TV, where vision comes to life. Follow our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Zambia Blog Radio or visit our website at www.zbtr2009.wixsite.com/ZBTR TV. Don't miss this opportunity to shine on ZBTR TV, where your vision comes to life.
All right, welcome back, everybody. You're watching ZBTR TV. My guests today, Dr. Jones Kasonso, Clement Mutambo, and Alfred joining us from Nigeria. So I posed the question, I said, and we all know this, everybody general know, Nigeria is Africa's most populous nation, and it is one of the three big economies of that continent. I believe it's Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa, right?
Yes.
Am I right? Yeah. Alfred, what's Nigeria's relationship with China, and how much is going on in Nigeria concerning from the Chinese?
The Chinese and Nigeria relationship, it's more of economic and infrastructural development. But the problem now is, in my own opinion, from my own research, I observed that China is not really much into, of course, they want to gain, but they are more concerned about the partnership, the relationship, more than what they will benefit. But still, they still have what they will benefit in mind, though. But, it's not like the way the other Westerners does theirs. And, the problem now is, despite this partnership in Nigeria, we've not really been seeing much evidence of this partnership. And this is due to the fact that our leaders in Nigeria are, should I use the word irresponsible? Because they are not accountable. So when they get funds from the Chinese government, they kind of blow it away and tend to not even use it for its main purpose. Throughout the previous administration, because we just have a new president presently. Yes, so the previous president we had in Nigeria, that is President Muhammadu Buhari, is during his administration, we observed a lot of loans from foreign countries, especially China. You would hear on the news, you wake up in the morning, you hear Nigeria had borrowed this amount of billions of dollars from China, and then another morning you wake up, you hear another loan again from China, or you hear another loan from the World Bank or the IMF, and you're always wondering, okay, these loans that our governments are trying to get, what exactly are they using the money for? The main objective, the main agenda of the Chinese government in partnering with the Nigerian government is for development. And China is technological inclined. Like, they have this mindset for technology, building relevant technologies that would solve humanity problems. And that is one of the things they want to achieve in Nigeria, to foster growth in that particular line, that particular technological industry. That is, if you look at most of the car assembling companies we have in Nigeria, most of the companies we have in Nigeria, factories and other companies, are probably owned by either the Chinese or the Indians, or possibly the Chinese are always given the contract to undo some, technological based projects in the country.
Okay.
So their own relationship with Nigeria is more focused on development, especially in the technological aspects, and of course the economical aspects too. But they believe that if Nigeria can tap into this particular growth when it comes to building relevant technologies and the likes like that, it would foster growth in the economy of the country. But we have leaders that don't even care, and you hear things like there are some things that just you hear, and it's funny. You hear that old politicians, the whole leaders will come and tell you the snake swallowed about, let's say, a huge amount of money, and you kept wondering, like, okay, how do you expect us to believe this kind of a thing? Like, does it even make sense? Does it sound logical? So one of the problems Nigeria presently is facing is that, number one, I don't see the relationship Nigeria is having with the Chinese government as threatening, in my own opinion. But the problem we have is we lack leaders who are visionary. There are people who only care about their own pockets and not the development of the country per se. Let me put it that way. So of course, the Chinese relationship with Nigeria, in my own opinion, is a very good relationship, because it have this ideology of fostering growth economically, and also technologically, and even when it comes to military aspects, like they want Nigeria to also gain dominance in the military part also. Okay. But so that's it.
Clement, what Alfred is saying, isn't that the same story across Africa as far as China is concerned?
Yeah, it's actually I would say, in just going off of what he just says, as he was talking about, I was thinking about because right before I came to the US, I worked in the mine. My company was part of the suppliers to the mines.
Yes.
Yeah, it was an Indian kind of institution. So as I was talking about that, I'm taking a view off of what Alfred has said, is that the biggest problem that I see with China and influence in Africa is that even as they, whether it's in the road industry, it's in whatever industries they are engaged in, you find that more often than not, they're also just their suppliers themselves. So the benefit is not really, it's even actually, it's not really more of a two-way street in a way, if you look at it in that nutshell, because for instance, in Zambia, I've been asking myself this question: say, why would China even have a bank in Zambia, for example? There's Bank of China in Zambia.
Yes.
So whatever resources whatever minerals and everything, whatever money.
Just right there, quick one. Alfred, does China have a banks in Nigeria?
Well, not yet, but I feel very soon it will happen.
Okay.
Like,
you see, the reason, why I asked that question, Clement, Dr. Kasonso, when I consider the population of Zambia to Nigeria, I would think they would have more banks in Nigeria than in Zambia. So why do they have a bank in Zambia?
It's very intriguing. So
yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, finish, Clement. I'm listening.
No, go ahead. I'll chime in. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Alfred is giving us a very good case study to actually pay attention to what is going on in Nigeria. Yeah, my view is that, first of all, before we look at what the relationship is doing financially in our own countries,
yes,
we also have to look at how first these financial relations in China are structured. For the longest time, there were two kinds of bonds that you get out of China. There were onshore yuan bonds which were at very low interest rates, maybe up to 5%. Those were onshore bonds, and then what they called the offshore yuan bond. So what happens is that Chinese companies and other Chinese enterprises under the would obtain these low interest onshore yuan bonds, and then they would form the majority of the market on offshore yuan bonds, which would have interest rates in the regions of 19%. You know, and then those are when you small poor countries like Zambia go to China to borrow, they don't have access to the markets for the onshore yuan bonds, but all they can afford to look at.
Oh, we lost him.
Okay.
Oh,
okay. So you want to finish your continue, Clement, what you were saying as we get to
yeah. So for me, like that example I gave, we should be waking up as African people. You know, I can imagine if Zambia can go and have a bank in China. I don't know if that can even be, I don't know how the country's policies work in there, or if there is. So, so I feel there's a lot of exploitation involved with our resources itself.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yes.
Look at countries like Congo, for example, one of the richest countries there is in the world. You know, but I mean, if China or any of these institutions want to improve the wealth of that country, they can set up industries there. You know, you find that these phones we use, most of these gadgets we use, all these ingredients that go in the phone come from countries like Congo, for example. You know, but they exporting all these raw materials. By the time that processed material comes, they sell you a phone at $1,000 and a TV at $1,000. So you even lose more.
Especially the iPhones.
Yes, you know those minerals. You go to Congo, those they're everywhere. You know, so the thing is, if this China want to improve countries like Congo, for example, they can set up industry there, which I think I don't know the industry they're setting up, but why is that not happening? And then we have schools, mining schools, engineering schools in Africa. We train our own people, but the thing is, the China still come and do all these jobs. So I don't know where we're going, but I think there's more we need to do as Africa. Yeah.
Sorry. I think I have something to say and add to this. You know, one thing I've observed about the Chinese and the Nigerian, or let me say African relationship is, look at this from this angle. Chinese governments loan our countries money for, let's say, the purpose for the loan is to build a good road, a good tiled road and overhead bridges on the road for effective, traveling and the likes like that. But let me use the word transportation. So now, the people who handle the projects, that is the construction of the road, will still be the Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see the point you are making.
In that case, that means even if they are giving us a low interest on the loan, the fact that we are still giving them the projects to handle means that they are still earning more.
The money is
interesting. I want us to end with this. Just a moment.
Yeah.
I want us to end with this. We've run out of time. I want us to end with this. There is an event in Dubai. I don't know. I was trying to remember the name. There is that event in Dubai. I think the president of Zambia.
Was it Burj Khalifa?
Pardon?
Was it Burj Khalifa?
I think it's something where they promote tourism. You remember that? There's an event in Dubai where something, I forget the name. Can somebody help with that? To me, the reason I bring that up is that is more defined. Its objective is clear. You don't need to think through much into it than the African Presidential Summit. You see the point I'm making? I do not mind my president going there because that event is defined. It's trying to, It's a business trade fair trying to look at and promote tourism. Because, I mean, I've asked a question here. Maybe somebody watching knows the answer. What was Putin's agenda objective of African Presidential Summit? What is Saudi Arabia's objective and agenda for the African Summit? What is Biden's agenda for the African Presidential Summit? The other question I want to ask, I don't know, we don't have an answer to this. We are not privy, we are not in government. Does the hosting country or calling this summit pay for the expenses for the presidential delegate, for the presidents to go to their country? Do they pay for the bills? You see, you need to look at it from that. That's the way I look at things, Dr. Kasonso. Are you going to pay my bill? A presidential trip is very expensive because, one, for the little knowledge that I know, you have to have a what do you call it? What is the terminology for when you send people ahead of you before anything happens?
Your delegates, like to tell
there are people who go ahead the security team to go and look at where you're going to be sleeping and where the meeting is. It doesn't matter where you're going. The Zambian, the Nigerian, the Zimbabwean Secret Service, whatever you call it, they need to be satisfied that our president is coming to stay here and it is safe. It doesn't matter which country they are going into. Presidential trips are expensive. That's the point I'm trying to make. And it is too much on these economies. African economies are ailing economies. And you cannot have, you see, the thing is, I didn't want people to begin to think that, oh, we're here to talk about HH is traveling and that. It's expensive. Whether you like it or not, it is expensive. The question is, are these trips translating into benefiting? And I'm not going to use the term nation. No. For me, is it benefiting the ordinary citizens? Dr. Kasonso, Clement, Alfred. How is the ordinary citizen benefiting from this? The reason I hired you as president is to ensure my welfare, my lifestyle is improved. I'm able to get a job. I'm able to buy food at a reasonable price, transportation, and all the basic necessities that a citizen is expected to get from his country. It's that simple. So when you go to a presidential summit in Saudi Arabia, how is it helping me? Quick comment as we end.
Let me quickly wind up my point as I mentioned on the UN bonds. When the UN bonds come to your country, they are investing in a project that are employing Chinese labor and Chinese technology and Chinese everything. So most of that bond is the way for the money to go back to China. So they don't invest the actual cash in your country. They leave structures there, but the money has gone. That is why you default, because the direct contribution in terms of economic activity does not include robust liquidity in your own economy. So that is the thing I wanted to comment on. On the issue of the presidential trips, if the in most cases, their trips are paid for. Their hosting in that country is paid for by the host country. So it's only getting maybe your president to there, which is going to be the cost. In terms of the direct impact on the pocketbook of a citizen, it depends with the current structure of the relationship you have with that country. If you owe them money and then those trips result in negotiating your debts down, then it's benefiting the local people in some way, because there is money to be paid that they are not going to pay in the short time. But for example, you mentioned Russia. That's why I said maybe their things are paid for there when they arrive, but their way to get there is on them, because when the host country invites them, the host country pays the expenses, their security, and their everything. But in Russia, I don't know where we can take
they have big pockets to pay for 50. How many countries are in Africa? 55. They have big pockets to settle that bill, so that's a big pocket right there. Anyway, Alfred, Alfred, thank you for taking time to be part of this. I This is not the first and last. I'll be calling on you.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, we need to, when we have these conversations, we need to call our brothers across the continent so that we hear what is pertaining on the ground. Dr. Kasonso, always good to hear your perspective. Clement, you and I need to work on a show. We have a lot of things to talk about and to discuss. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Baba.
All right, that was my show for today. I hope we've talked about things that have answered the question. I just thought that we should try and look at that situation. African presidents have been called to summits in America, China, Russia, and most recently Saudi Arabia. So I was just asking a question: how is that beneficial to my cousin in Kashikish, in Sinazongwe, and all those places? Next week, after a long overdue time, we are having Zambia Must Prosper President Kelvin Fubewalia is going to be my guest next week as we discuss his vision and where his party is going and how the KBF presidency will look like should he be able to win the 2026 elections. Thank you once again, everybody. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, ZBTR TV. Follow us on Facebook, Zambia ZBTR TV, and we are also on Twitter or X, Zambia Blog Talk Radio. Have a good weekend.
Zambia Blog Talk Radio.